Something felt wrong the moment Danny Reeves stepped off the shuttle, though he couldn't name it at first. It wasn't the alarms. They were expected on a research station this size. It wasn't the distant tremor of containment locks cycling or the garbled announcements echoing through the docking hall. It was something smaller, a hesitation in the air. A brief, quiet pause between sounds, like the station itself was waiting for something to happen. He took one slow breath, tasting recycled oxygen and the faint tang of coolant vapors, and the unease settled deeper. Then the chaos rushed toward him. A small, furry creature bolted down the corridor, arms overloaded with documents. Its steps were frantic, its pupils blown wide with panic. Behind it, two security officers shouted into their communicators, scrambling after whatever emergency Danny had apparently arrived in the middle of. "You are the human," the creature gasped when it skidded to a stop in front of him. Danny blinked. "Last I checked." "I am Milo," it panted. "Your assistant. We must discuss safety protocols immediately. There are 147 pages of required reading before you can begin work. This station's mortality rate is statistically unacceptable. Please follow me and do not touch anything." Danny allowed himself the briefest smile. Milo was afraid of everything, including him, but fear often hid intelligence, and Danny preferred nervous competence over false confidence any day. As they walked, the ambient noise shifted around them. Footsteps, equipment carts, mechanical rumble, snippets of dozens of languages layered together. The station was a melting pot of species, all bustling with purpose, some staring openly at Danny with curiosity, others with something that looked uncomfortably like pity. "What's with the alarm?" Danny asked as they turned a corner. Milo flinched hard, feeding time. "Ah," Danny murmured, "that time of day." Milo didn't appreciate the humor. "Please don't make jokes, not about the gliders. They become agitated. 3 staff members have died this cycle alone. We lost a researcher last month. She got too close to the barrier and one of them reached through a gap in the plating." Danny heard the fear behind the explanation, the way Milo's voice tightened on certain words. Trauma had a rhythm. So did places where people died too often. He followed Milo through a long corridor of polished alloy and gentle blue illumination. The station's aesthetic was clean, understated. Functional European minimalism stretched across a floating research fortress. No unnecessary decoration. Nothing sentimental. Just steel, glass, and the quiet hum of machines working harder than they were designed for. "You know about the Venom gliders?" Milo asked, sounding both hopeful and horrified. "Basics," Danny said. "Apex predator, severe neurotoxin, untouchable." "That is an understatement," Milo sputtered. "They kill any species within seconds. No known immunity. No exceptions. Everyone who has tried to handle them has died." "Everyone." The word lingered in Danny's mind longer than it should have. They arrived at a reinforced viewing chamber. Milo stopped abruptly. "Look," he whispered. Danny stepped to the glass. For a moment he forgot to breathe. The habitat was massive, larger than he expected, an artificial canyon of stone formations and bioluminescent flora. And moving through the air were the gliders themselves. They were beautiful. Bodies the size of large birds, wings thin as membrane yet strong as alloy, scales refracting the artificial lighting into iridescent ripples. They moved like ribbons drifting through water, elegant, effortless, silent. Then one slammed itself against the viewing window with a violent crack. Milo shrieked. Danny didn't flinch. He watched the creature press its venom-coated face against the glass, teeth bared in silent fury, scales flaring into sharp defensive spikes. "They fear nothing," Milo whispered. Danny tilted his head slightly. "You sure about that?" Milo blinked rapidly. "What do you mean?" Danny didn't answer immediately. He studied the creatures the way he had once studied taipans curling protectively around their nests, or crocodiles circling their riverbank with bodies low and tense. These gliders checked their surroundings too often. Their wings twitched when staff walked past. Their eyes darted not toward prey but toward exits, and in one corner a cluster huddled tightly, half hidden behind rock structures. That wasn't aggression. It was defense. "I think they're afraid," Danny murmured. Milo stared at him like he'd spoken forbidden words. "They are apex predators." "Even apex predators fear something," Danny said softly. "Everything does." Milo sputtered. That is scientifically irresponsible." Danny shrugged lightly. "Maybe." He stepped closer to the glass. The same glider slammed itself again, scales bristling, eyes locked on him, not with hatred but with something sharper, almost pleading. He had seen that look before. Animals removed from their home always carried it. "Has anyone tried being gentle with them?" Danny asked. Milo nearly dropped all his documents. "Gentle with them? Are you? Why would anyone gentle?" Danny nodded toward the corner where several gliders huddled, wings pulled tight, bodies trembling subtly. "Because they're acting like something hurt them, recently or long ago. Hard to tell which without observing more." Milo opened and closed his mouth like a creature, attempting to reboot its brain. Danny took one more slow breath. The unease he'd felt since stepping off the shuttle had grown heavier, denser. It was coming from behind the glass, coiling through the air, watching him the way he watched them. "I want to go inside," Danny said. Milo screamed into his communicator. The chaos that followed came fast, security rushing in, medical teams preparing for a body recovery rather than a rescue, Supervisor Pollock arriving with crystalline limbs moving in agitated patterns. "You wish to enter the habitat," Pollock said sharply. "Then you wish to die." "Not particularly. You will not be special, human. Every being who has touched a glider has died." Danny looked through the glass. The glider staring back at him had stopped flaring its scales. "Just for a moment." "Maybe I'm not special," Danny whispered. "Maybe I'm just willing to try something different." That night, alone in his quarters, he read everything he could. The official reports, the censored sections, the old expedition logs buried under layers of bureaucratic formatting. And there it was. One line. Subjects were removed forcibly from nesting sites. Significant resistance encountered. Multiple eggs destroyed during extraction. He closed his eyes. That explained everything. In the stillness of his room, Danny whispered the quiet truth the station had ignored for decades. "They're not monsters, they're grieving." He didn't sleep. Tomorrow would be different. One way or another. Milo's panic was the first sound Danny heard when he arrived at the habitat entrance the next morning. Rapid, breathless, almost frantic, like someone trying to stop a disaster already in motion. Danny was calmly removing his protective suit. Piece by piece. Deliberate, quiet, unhurried. "What are you doing?" Milo squealed, tail bristling, eyes stretched wide with dread. "The controlled test isn't scheduled until next week. Supervisor Pollock hasn't approved anything. Security hasn't been warned. The medical team hasn't prepared." "Danny, please." Danny placed the chest plate aside. "They're worse today." "Worse?" Milo sounded like a creature about to faint. "What does that mean?" "I watched the morning feeding," Danny said, his voice low, even steady. "They're not just agitated, they're panicked. Something changed." He didn't mention the silence, the eerie, unnatural stillness afterward, the way Whisper, the big female, had perched on the far rock formation, wings trembling as though she were trying not to scream. Danny had seen animals before storms behave like that. But this wasn't a storm. It was memory. "You cannot go in unsupervised," Milo begged. "You cannot go in at all, you'll die. In seconds. This is not bravery, this is statistical suicide." Danny gave a short exhale that wasn't quite a laugh. Maybe. That word again. It rolled through Milo like thunder. Within moments, security began pouring into the corridor. A medic dropped a tray of emergency injectors. Someone else shouted for reinforcements. The quiet morning had erupted into a crowd, a panic, a gathering of people who came not to stop him, but to witness the moment a human decided to ignore every rule designed to keep him alive. Then Pollock arrived. Crystalline limbs adjusted in sharp angular motions, colors refracting in ways Danny had learned to read: stress, confusion, anger. "Human," Pollock said, each word clipped. "Step away from that door." Danny turned. "I understand your concerns." "No, you do not," Pollock snapped. "You don't understand the risk. You don't understand what you are asking. Those creatures are traumatized," Danny said softly. "They've been treated like monsters since the day they were captured." Pollock's limbs froze in mid-motion, their crystalline body going still. Danny continued. "Every time one of you approaches wearing those heavy suits, carrying electric prods, taking samples, shouting instructions, it reminds them of how they were taken. You don't know that." "I know how animals behave when they expect pain," Danny said. "And they expect pain from you, from anyone wearing the uniform, from this place. They're reacting to memory, not instinct." Pollock stared at him. Milo stared at him. Security stared at him. No one spoke. So Danny did. "Removing the suit won't make them friendly," he said gently, "but it will tell them I'm not here to hurt them." Pollock's voice dropped. "You will die." Danny typed the code into the access panel. "Maybe." The door clicked. Gasps filled the corridor. Milo covered his eyes with both hands, whispering something that sounded like a prayer to whichever statistical model might still save Danny's life. The door slid open. Danny stepped inside. It closed behind him. The sound was final. Air pressure shifted. The habitat lighting hummed quietly. A warm draft rolled across the artificial landscape, carrying the faint bioluminescent scent of the native flora from the glider. And everything inside the habitat froze. Every glider. Mid-flight, mid-perch, mid-glide. Dozens of wings halted in the air like frozen stained glass sculptures. Their eyes, dark, deep, unblinking, locked onto him. Time didn't slow. It simply stopped caring about moving. Danny's heart beat once. Then again. The first glider moved. Not slowly. Not cautiously. But fast, predatory, silent, a streak of iridescent light slicing downward from the tallest perch. It wasn't diving to kill him. It was diving to test him. Danny knew the difference. He didn't step back. He kept his hands visible, palms open, body relaxed. No flinch. No brace. Animals sense tension like electromagnetic fields. Stillness mattered. The glider pulled up inches from his chest. Air rushed past him, warm and sharp with venom scent. It circled him once, twice, 3 times. Then it landed on his shoulder. Outside the glass, someone screamed. Danny didn't move. The glider pressed its scales against his bare neck. Venom-coated ridges touched his skin. A mild tingling followed, not pain, not heat, like static electricity brushing across his nerves. The glider pressed harder, expecting, it seemed, something to happen. Nothing did. Danny lifted a slow hand and touched the creature's wing. Soft, cooler than he expected, smooth as river stone. The glider shivered. Not from aggression. From uncertainty. More shapes approached, 2, then 5, then 9 gliders landing on his arms, his back, his shoulders, his legs. Tiny claws gripping fabric, wings opening and closing slowly. He was covered in death. Except they weren't killing him. They were confused, testing, curious. A sound rippled through the habitat, soft clicks passing from glider to glider like a shared breath of disbelief. Then the air changed again. The others moved back. The big female descended. Slow. Deliberate. Her wings unfurled, wider than all the others. Her scales shifted from deep violet to black, the colors of warning, dominance, grief. Whisper. Danny felt it, the gravity of her presence. She landed before him, head low, wings half open, a silent threat. Or a silent plea. He knelt. Not dramatically, not submissively, just low enough to say, "I'm not here to take anything from you." He extended his hand. Palm open. Whisper watched him. Seconds passed. 1, 2, 5, 10. Outside the glass, no one breathed. Then Whisper stepped forward. One slow step. Then another. Then another. Her scales folded down, her wings relaxed. She touched her face to his open palm. A vibration filled the air. A soft, trembling hum. A sound of recognition. Of relief. Of someone remembering what comfort once felt like. Whisper purred. Danny closed his eyes. "I know," he whispered. "I know what they did to you." The glider pressed closer. "I'm sorry." He didn't know if she understood the words. But she understood the weight. And for the first time since her capture decades ago, she trusted someone. Outside the habitat window, the station had gone silent. Not in fear, though there was that too, but in the stunned realization that something impossible had happened. A human was holding a Venom glider. And he was alive. Whisper curled against his chest. Danny rested a hand on her head, feeling the faint tremor of a creature who had spent half a lifetime expecting pain. Behind the glass, Pollock stood motionless. Milo lowered his hand slowly, eyes wide and wet. The medical team lowered their equipment. No one spoke. No one dared. Danny whispered, "You're safe." And Whisper believed him. He wasn't sure he deserved that. But he knew, with a quiet certainty that felt heavier than fear. What happened in this habitat today would change everything. For them. For him. For the entire galaxy. The lights were too bright. Clinical, unforgiving. Designed to reveal weakness rather than heal it. Danny sat on the exam table while machines hummed around him. Slow pulses, soft chimes, screens blooming with data he couldn't decipher. A doctor drifted between instruments like a ghost, shaped from translucent skin and thin, iridescent veins. "You should be dead," the doctor muttered for the third time. Danny didn't respond. The glider's scent was still on him, warm minerals and faint bioluminescence. It clung to the edges of his sleeves, soaked faintly into his skin. He wished the smelled like that instead of disinfectant and cold ozone. Milo sat curled in the corner, tail wrapped around his legs, eyes still wide with the disbelief of someone who had witnessed something the universe insisted was impossible. He hadn't spoken much since they brought Danny in. Just small, intermittent breaths like he was rationing oxygen. The doctor materialized beside him with a small scanner. "Your blood neutralizes their toxin instantly. I have never seen anything like it." Danny exhaled slowly. Humans evolved with venomous animals. It's in the system somehow. "An understatement," the doctor murmured. "A billion-year genetic accident." Danny almost smiled at that. An accident, that sounded about right. Before he could answer, the door slid open with a hydraulic sigh. Commander entered, water swirling inside their mobility suit. The lights reflected off the suit's reinforced plating, making the commander's expression hard to read beneath rippling blue liquid. Behind them followed Supervisor Pollock, crystal patterns dimmed into a muted spectrum, the color of someone preparing for conflict. "Wasted no time." "You broke protocol," they said, voice cold even. You entered a restricted habitat without authorization. Danny didn't move. You risked containment failure, continued. You risked mass panic, you risked your life and ours, and you did it knowingly. Danny met the commander's gaze through the water-filled mask. And I showed you something your protocols never could. O leaned forward slightly. And what is that, human? That they're alive, Danny said quietly. The silence that followed felt sharper than any accusation. Pollock folded two arms across their chest, the other two held rigid at their sides. Milo's tail twitched, nervous, hopeful. The doctor paused mid-scan. Didn't blink. Alive is not the same as safe, they said. Those creatures have killed researchers for decades. They killed in fear, Danny interrupted. Not instinct, not malice, fear. His voice hardened. They are dangerous specimens. No, Danny said softly, they're survivors. The commander's body stilled. Danny continued, voice steady but quiet, carrying the slow cadence of someone trying to explain a truth others had long refused to see. When animals are taken from their nests, from their families, when their eggs are destroyed in front of them, something breaks, not instinct, trust, and everything after that becomes self-defense. Pollock's crystalline limbs flickered blue, then violet, then a trembling shade of gray. Did not react. You have no evidence for such claims. Danny held their gaze. I do. He didn't bother explaining the nest he'd found. Whisper's trembling wings. The way she clung to the hidden corner like a grieving mother desperate to protect what little she had left. He didn't have to. Pollock spoke softly, almost reluctantly. Commander, the humans' observations are not unfounded. Behavioral logs indicate patterns of protective posturing among the dominant female. Enough, snapped. Their water suit rippled violently, sending refracted light scattering across the. I did not authorize you, said, turning back to Danny. I did not approve your experiment, and now. They paused. Something cold shifted behind their gaze. Now the Consortium has taken interest. Danny felt something tighten behind his ribs. The Consortium. Nodded once. They have been monitoring glider research for years, waiting, watching, looking for a way to exploit your discovery. Danny's jaw clenched. Exploit how? Pollock answered quietly. They believe if humans can interact safely, then humans can eliminate them safely. Danny went still. They want there, said. The largest mineral deposit in this sector lies beneath glider territory. Too dangerous to mine, too costly to sterilize, until now. The words fell heavy. Sterilize. Eliminate. Danny's stomach dropped, not sharply, not dramatically, but with a quiet, steady weight that felt like drowning. They want to destroy the species, he whispered. Said nothing. Silence was confirmation enough. Milo pressed his hands to his mouth, muffling a small, helpless sound. Pollock turned away, crystalline limbs trembling. Danny stood slowly from the exam table. No. The word wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried in the air like an anchor dropping through deep water, settling into the floor between them. Narrowed their eyes. You do not have authority here. I don't need authority, Danny said. I just need time. For what? Demanded. Danny didn't answer immediately. He stared through the window at the distant corridor, at the habitat entrance beyond it, at the invisible weight of what Whisper had shown him. For them, exhaled, bubbles rising in their suit. You misunderstand the situation. The Consortium owns this station. They dictate the direction of research, and they have already decided the fate of those creatures. Danny shook his head slowly. There's always a choice. His voice went cold. Not this time. Danny stepped forward, just enough to force eye contact. You're wrong. Pollock inhaled sharply, a crystalline intake of breath. stared at Danny, searching for something: fear, weakness, compliance. They found none. After several long seconds, the commander turned away. "This conversation is over," said, voice tight with something that might have been anger or resignation. They left without another word. Pollock remained for a long moment, looking at Danny with an expression he couldn't decipher, something caught between guilt and the faintest flicker of hope. Then they followed the commander out. The door hissed shut. Danny finally sat again, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. His heartbeat was steady, too steady for someone who'd just been told the creatures he'd touched were scheduled for eradication. Milo approached, hesitant. "Danny, what are you going to do?" Danny didn't lift his head. His voice came out low, controlled. "I don't know." He breathed once. "But I won't let them die." Milo swallowed hard. "That sounds impossible." Danny finally looked up. "So is touching a Venom glider," he said, "and yet here we are." Milo blinked, trembling. "You're serious?" "Completely." He stood. There was no heroism in his posture, no bravado, just a quiet conviction that felt older than fear. He walked toward the door. Milo called out softly, "Danny, you can't fight the Consortium." Danny paused. "I'm not going to fight them," he whispered. "Then what?" Danny looked back. "I'm going to outthink them." And without another word, he stepped into the corridor as if he already knew the path forward, even if the rest of the galaxy didn't yet. The habitat changed after that day. Not outwardly. The artificial cliffs still glowed faintly with bioluminescent moss. The thermal vents still released steady streams of warm vapor. The automated feeders still dispensed nutrient mist across the canopy twice per cycle. But something subtle shifted. The gliders watched him differently. They tracked his movements not with suspicion nor hostility, but with an alertness that felt almost hopeful. When Danny stepped into the observation corridor, heads lifted, wings settled. A faint ripple of soft chirps passed quietly among them. Whisper was always first to greet him. She would glide down from her perch with a slowness she never showed to anyone else, landing beside him with wings half open, eyes attentive. He'd kneel, offer a hand, and she would press against his touch as if grounding herself. The others took longer. One glider, small, with pale green scales, hovered nearby for several days without landing. Danny made no move toward it, letting the creature's curiosity unfold on its own terms. Eventually, the small one drifted onto his boot and perched there like it was claiming territory. Another glider, broader in the wings, circled him for nearly half an hour before landing on his shoulder, cautious but steady. Danny learned their habits through silent observation. They groomed each other at dusk, soft, repetitive motions of wings smoothing scales, small chittering sounds that resembled whispered reassurance. They played in the early artificial morning, chasing each other across the rock formations in spirals that resembled aerial dances. They mourned too. He saw it once, an older recording he'd found in the archives, playing on a forgotten terminal. A previous glider had died years ago. The moment the playback reached the part where the body collapsed, Whisper, who had been dozing beside him, jerked awake. She stared at the footage. Her wings trembled. Then she made a sound so low and so broken that Danny had to close the file. He sat beside her until her shaking eased, unsure if his presence meant anything, but unwilling to leave her alone in that grief. Later that night, while reviewing data with Milo, he said softly, "They remember." Milo's stylus paused midair. "Remember what?" "Everything," Danny murmured. "Pain, loss, faces, places, sounds when they were taken." Milo swallowed. "That is remarkable." Danny shook his head. "It's tragic." Whisper guided him deeper into the habitat a week later, beyond the main formations, past the artificial waterfall system, into a corner he rarely examined. She nudged him repeatedly until he followed. Behind a cluster of carefully arranged rocks, hidden from the observation windows, was a nest. 3 eggs rested in a shallow depression, faintly glowing under the thermal lamps. Danny's breath stopped. Whisper moved beside him, wings spread slightly, not in aggression but in fear. Her body curved protectively around the eggs. "You've been keeping them hidden," Danny whispered. Whisper chirped once low. Danny knelt. His knees touched the warm, artificial soil. The eggs were beautiful, translucent shells pulsing faintly with internal bioluminescent veins. Life. Fragile. Defiant. "So that's why you're always near this corner," he murmured. "Why you attack anyone who gets close." Whisper nudged an egg with her nose, then looked at him. He understood instantly. She was trusting him with the thing she valued most in the world. Danny felt the weight of that trust like a physical blow. He placed one hand gently on the ground beside her, not touching the eggs, just close enough to show respect. "I won't tell anyone," he whispered, "not until we know how to keep them safe." Even as he spoke, a tightening formed in his chest. He knew the truth. The station was not safe. The Consortium was coming. They would treat these eggs exactly as they had treated every other specimen in their way, with efficiency, indifference, and violence. Whisper chirped again, more softly. Danny sat with her until she rested her head against his arm. Later that night, he stayed awake in his quarters, staring at the dim lights reflecting off the metallic ceiling. His thoughts looped through the same quiet cycle: doubt, determination, guilt, hope. The emotional weight of what he'd been trusted with pressed heavily on him. Once, years ago, he had rescued a clutch of baby crocodiles from a poacher. He had felt the same tremor of responsibility then, the knowledge that some lives depended entirely on his choices. But this was different. This wasn't just one nest. It was a species. The next morning, he returned to the habitat early. Whisper was already waiting. She pressed her head into his palm, her scales warm. The other gliders hovered nearby, making soft sounds that resembled cautious acceptance. Danny didn't speak at first. He didn't have to. The silence between them said enough, an unspoken understanding that time was running out. Later that day, during a review session, Milo stared at a data panel without really seeing it. "You know," Milo whispered, "if anyone else discovered that nest, those eggs, they wouldn't survive." Danny nodded slowly. "I know." Milo hesitated. "Then you need to plan quietly, carefully." Danny looked at him. Milo's voice trembled, but the resolve beneath it was unmistakable. "You're going to save them," Milo whispered. Danny didn't confirm it out loud. He didn't deny it either. That night, he returned to the habitat one more time before the artificial lights dimmed. Whisper greeted him instantly. The smaller gliders perched around them, their wings brushing lightly against his arms, legs, shoulders. The habitat felt different, less like a containment cell, more like a sanctuary built from shared fear and fragile trust. Danny moved to Whisper's nest and sat on the ground beside her. The eggs glowed softly in the dim light. Whisper curled around them and then pressed herself against his side. "They're beautiful," Danny whispered. Whisper made a soft rumble of agreement. The world outside this room was preparing to destroy them. Inside this room, Danny was preparing to stop it. He didn't yet know how, or what it would cost, or if he'd succeed. But he knew one thing with quiet certainty. He wasn't going to let this species vanish into a corporate ledger. Whisper's head rested on his lap. Her breathing was steady. Her trust was absolute. And Danny felt the weight of that trust settle deeper, anchoring itself in a place he'd never admit existed, not to himself, not to anyone. Something inside him shifted then. Something that wouldn't shift back. He reached out and gently touched one egg. A pulse of warmth met his hand. Life. Fragile, precious, terrifying. He whispered, barely audible. "I'll get you home." Whether he said it to Whisper or the unborn gliders, he wasn't sure. But Whisper lifted her head, eyes soft, and chirped once. She believed him. He wished he believed himself as deeply. The announcement reached him in the habitat. A clipped artificial voice over the station-wide intercom. No urgency, no warning, just a simple message that felt like a knife slipped quietly between ribs. Consortium vessel inbound, docking. Danny froze. Two juvenile gliders, ones that had only recently begun to trust him, were perched on his forearm, playing a slow game of tug and release with his sleeve. They sensed his change in tension before he moved. Their wings tightened. Whisper, perched above him on the thermal vent, lifted her head. Something shifted in the air. A low vibration, a shared instinct passing from glider to glider. A fear they didn't yet understand. Or maybe they did. Maybe they remembered the last time ships like that appeared in their sky. Danny whispered softly, "It's all right, just stay close." He wasn't sure if he believed it. Minutes later, Milo's voice burst through the small communicator at his belt. Breathless, shaken, the sound of someone running. "Danny, conference room, now please hurry." He didn't ask questions. He didn't say goodbye to Whisper. He didn't look at the eggs. He simply stood, and the gliders moved aside as if they sensed that something approaching the habitat walls was far worse than anything Danny had ever brought inside with him. The conference room was too quiet when he entered. Commander stood at the head of the table, rigid posture, water swirling sharply inside their mobility suit. Pollock hovered near one wall, crystalline arms folded tightly, tension flickering like trapped lightning through their structure. And next to them stood a creature Danny had never seen before. "Director." The smile came first, wide, practiced, containing nothing human except the posture of someone used to getting what they want. Gray skin, small too-many-teeth grin, eyes devoid of warmth. "Researcher Reeves," said, stretching the words like someone savoring them. "The human we've heard so much about." Danny didn't bother to sit. Continued undeterred. "I must commend you. Few beings in the galaxy could have survived physical contact with a Venom glider. Fewer still would be, how shall we say, reckless enough to attempt it." "That wasn't the point of—" "But point hardly matters," interrupted smoothly. "Results do." Danny stiffened. The air seemed to thin. Walked a slow semicircle around the table, hands clasped loosely behind his back. Every step felt deliberate, rehearsed. "You have answered a question that has limited our operations for decades," he said. "Can Venom gliders be handled safely? Can they be neutralized without loss of personnel? Can their defenses be bypassed?" Danny felt the bottom drop out of the world. Neutralized. Flashed a brighter smile. Eliminated. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Danny's chest tightened, not with fear but with a slow-burning anger, the kind that begins deep and controlled, almost cold. "You want to kill them," he said quietly. Shrugged. "There contains the richest mineral veins in this sector. Untapped. Protected only by those creatures. With your discovery, that barrier is removed." Danny's hands curled into fists. "They're not a barrier," he said. "They're a species." "A pest species," corrected. "Unnecessarily dangerous, unprofitable, and your research has proven humanity can remove them cleanly." Pollock's crystalline limbs twitched sharply at that. Milo made a soft, strangled gasp. Closed their eyes for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Danny to understand that the commander had seen this future coming long before Danny ever touched Whisper. Danny took one step forward. "If you touch a single glider." Waved a hand dismissively. "Please don't posture. You are a researcher, not a soldier, and certainly not someone in a position to negotiate." Danny's jaw tightened. "Then why am I here?" "Because," said, leaning in slightly, You can make this easy." Danny didn't move, didn't blink. Easy for who? "For everyone," said almost sweetly. "You assist us with the specimens here, demonstrate the safety protocols. Then human teams clear the no unnecessary suffering, efficient, clean, controlled." Pollock spoke for the first time. Their voice sounded brittle. "Director, the gliders show signs of advanced cognition." Didn't even glance at them. "We are not here to debate ethics. We are here to proceed with extraction operations long overdue." Danny's throat felt like it was closing. "Extraction. Not research. Mining." He turned to, "You're allowing this." His gaze flickered downward. "The Consortium controls funding, research directives, oversight. I cannot refuse them." Danny stared at the commander. The disappointment cut deeper than anger ever could. "There's always a choice," he whispered. His voice was quiet. "Not for me." Then clapped his hands together. "Wonderful, now that we're aligned." "We're not," Danny said sharply. Paused mid-step. "I'm sorry." "You're not touching them," Danny said. No raise of tone, no dramatic delivery, just a simple, immovable fact. Smiled again, but it was thinner this time. "You misunderstand, Mr. Reeves. You are not being asked." Danny didn't speak. Something inside him shifted then. The last fragment of hesitation, the final tether of obedience to a system that had proven itself hollow. He turned and walked out. Called after him, "You cannot stop inevitability, human. You can only choose how much you suffer resisting it." Danny didn't look back. He didn't trust himself to. When he reached the corridor, Milo ran to him, eyes wide, hands shaking. "Danny, what are you going to do?" Danny didn't answer right away. He leaned against the wall, closed his eyes, and exhaled a slow, steady breath. Whisper's weight flashed in his memory, the gentle tremble of her wings, the warmth of her scales, the way she curled around the eggs like the last fragile hope she had left. "I don't know yet," he said quietly. Milo swallowed. "But you're not letting them take the gliders." Danny opened his eyes. "No," he said, "I'm not." He pushed off the wall. He wasn't sure where he was going. Only what he couldn't allow. Milo jogged to keep up. "Danny, this is the Consortium. They'll destroy you." Danny didn't slow. "Maybe," he murmured, "but not before I make it very, very difficult." He didn't know the plan yet. But the decision had already been made. He would save Whisper. He would save the eggs. He would save as many gliders as he could. And whatever that made him, hero, criminal, fugitive, exile, it didn't matter. Some things were worth the consequences. Pollock didn't speak at first. After Danny told them everything, the room felt too small, the silence too heavy. Milo stood in the corner, wringing his hands so tightly that his fur puffed around his fingers. The dim lights flickered softly across Pollock's crystalline surface, casting fractured colors on the walls like trembling echoes of emotions Danny couldn't interpret. When Pollock finally moved, all four hands came together in front of them. A gesture Danny had learned meant hesitation, shame, and something hauntingly close to regret. "You are asking me," Pollock said quietly, "to betray the most powerful institution in this sector." Danny shook his head. "I'm asking you to help me save a species that doesn't deserve what's coming." Pollock's limbs tensed. Their bodies shifted through uncertain hues. "The Consortium is unstoppable. They have political immunity, military contracts, influence. If you challenge them, you will be erased." Danny exhaled carefully. Whisper's touch still lingered on his arm in his memory, the trusting press of her head, the trembling warmth of her breath when he'd found the eggs. "I can't let them be wiped out," he said. "Not after what I've seen, not after everything the station took from them." Pollock's breath, if the sound could even be called that, fell shallow. "Why you? Why does this matter so deeply to you?" Danny didn't have a simple answer. Maybe there wasn't one. Still, he tried. When I was 12, he said quietly, I watched a conservation team clear a wetland near my home. Dozens of nests destroyed because the land was valuable. No one called it killing. They called it ecological correction. Pollock didn't blink. They couldn't. But something about the stillness of their posture changed. I learned then that institutions justify harm by renaming it, Danny went on. The Consortium calls it extraction, efficiency, resource optimization. He shook his head. But Whisper doesn't care what they call it. Her eggs won't survive a definition. Pollock lowered their head slightly. The gesture looked like surrender or perhaps acceptance. My clutchmate, they said softly. Danny blinked. What? Pollock's voice thinned to something rarely heard on the station. Fragility. Before I came here, I had a clutchmate, small, curious, fragile. They trusted me. And when the research board came for them, I let them take them. Their crystalline limbs dimmed. It was protocol, policy, scientific necessity. That is what I told myself. The next words cracked. They died on a table. Danny didn't speak. Not yet. The quiet between them felt necessary, like a thin membrane holding back a flood. Pollock finally looked at him. Fear, they said. It dictated my every action then. It cost someone I loved their life. I will not make that mistake again. Danny felt something shift, something important. Pollock's voice steadied. What do you need? Danny hesitated only briefly. Then he outlined the plan, the simplest plan in the universe, simple because anything more complex would have failed. He would steal a shuttle. He would take Whisper and her eggs. He would get them back to there, before the Consortium's extermination teams touched down. Pollock said nothing while he spoke, but their body glowed faintly with a hardened hue, a steady crystalline resolve. And when Danny finished, Pollock nodded once. I will provide clearance codes, they said, and shuttle access. Milo made a terrified squeak. This is madness, brilliant, necessary madness, but still madness. Danny crouched beside him. Are you with me? Milo's eyes shimmered. For a long moment, he seemed frozen between terror and loyalty. Then he swallowed. I'll reroute the security feeds. I'll falsify departure logs. I'll do everything I can. Danny put a hand on his shoulder. Thank you. That night was quiet. Too quiet. Danny sat inside the habitat, Whisper curled around her eggs, her wings casting soft shadows across the artificial stones. The habitat lights dimmed to mimic sunset. The smaller gliders perched on branches, watching silently. Danny ran a hand gently over Whisper's back. We don't have long, he whispered. Whisper lifted her head and pressed it against his cheek. The same sound, the soft hum she'd made the first day, vibrated through him. Not fear, not sadness. Trust. You're going home, Danny said. I promise. A promise he had no right to make, but every intention of keeping. He looked around at the others, at the gliders who had learned to trust him, who made soft, chittering sounds of concern. They couldn't all come. The small shuttle couldn't carry more than Whisper and the eggs. The truth hurt in a way he didn't allow himself to show. Some creatures must be saved first, so others can be saved later. He hoped they'd understand someday. When he left, Whisper followed him to the door, pressed one wing against the glass as it closed. Danny pressed his hand to the other side. Neither moved until the final seal hissed shut. Hours later, the station sank into artificial night. The corridors emptied. The lights dimmed to a low blue hum. Security rotation slowed. Danny moved. Not hurriedly. Not fearfully. Just quietly, determined. He carried a thermal container, carefully padded to stabilize the eggs. Whisper padded behind him, wings held low to stay hidden in the shadows. Her scales dimmed to a deep, protective black, instinctively cloaking both of them. Milo's whisper crackled faintly in Danny's earpiece. Security patrol passed Bay 7 3 seconds ago. You have 4 minutes. Danny slipped into the shuttle bay. Pollock stood waiting in the shadows, 4 arms folded, crystalline light dim but steady. "You understand what this means," they said softly. Danny nodded. "Do you?" Pollock pressed 2 hands briefly to his shoulder, a gesture somewhere between blessing and apology. "Go," they whispered. Danny boarded the shuttle. Whisper followed, wings trembling. He secured the eggs inside the reinforced container. She pressed against it instantly, warming them with her body. The engines hummed to life. Milo's voice rushed through the earpiece. "Opening bay doors, Danny. Problem, Commander is awake. They're checking logs. You have to launch, now." Danny hit the thrusters. The shuttle shot forward. The bay doors parted with a narrow margin, 1 meter clearance at best. Metal scraped the hull. Lights flashed warnings. Whisper hissed, scales flaring. Then the shuttle burst into open space. Stars rushed around them. The station lights receded. For one weightless moment, Danny thought, "We might make it." Then the alarm sounded. "Unidentified vessel," his voice boomed across the comms. "Return immediately or we will respond with force." Danny shut off the channel. Behind them, ships detached from the station, sleek, fast, armed. Whisper pressed herself against the viewport. Danny gripped the controls. There was no going back now. He whispered, "Hold on," and pushed the engines harder. The stars blurred into thin, pale streaks as Danny pushed the shuttle harder than its frame had been designed to handle. The engine vibrated beneath the floor plates with a low, uneven growl, each tremor carrying the warning that something inside was dangerously close to giving out. Whisper crouched beside the egg container, wings wrapped around the fragile shells. Her body shook with every burst of acceleration, yet she didn't move away, didn't flinch. The trembling wasn't fear for herself. It was for them. Danny stole a glance at her. "Almost clear," he whispered, though it was a lie told gently, the way one reassures a frightened child even when the storm overhead is still building. The sensor alerts kept rising. 2 pursuit craft closing in fast. Milo's voice crackled through the comm, barely audible beneath the static interference. "Danny, you're still within local jurisdiction. They can fire at will. You need to break orbit." Danny gritted his teeth. "I'm trying." "Try faster," Milo whispered, voice trembling. Another alert, closer this time. A lock-on warning flashed red across the console. Danny jerked the shuttle sharply to the right, the inertia slamming him sideways in his seat. Pain flared along his shoulder. Whisper hissed as her body braced against the container. A beam of blue-white plasma streaked past the viewport, missing the shuttle by less than a meter. He didn't curse. He didn't panic. He only breathed, short, controlled breaths that kept his hands steady. Behind him, Whisper let out a low hum, her wings expanding just an inch as if sensing danger she couldn't see. "I know," Danny muttered. "I hear them too." The next announcement wasn't a warning. It was a verdict. "Commander," voice cold, firm, irrevocable. "Return to the station, Danny Reeves. Last chance. Don't make me order your destruction." Danny shut his eyes for the briefest moment. He heard what didn't say, the strain, the fractured hesitation, the guilt threaded through the command. But the station's laws didn't care about guilt. Duty was a blade with one edge. Disobeying it had consequences even couldn't shield him from. He reopened his eyes. "No," he whispered, not to Milo, not even to the gliders. To himself. No turning back. He cut the comm line completely. The silence that followed was almost peaceful. Almost. Another plasma beam streaked past. This one hit the shuttle's aft hull with a jarring metallic scream, sending the vessel into a brief spin. Danny corrected manually, fighting the trembling of the controls, forcing the shuttle back on course. Whisper let out a pained trill, a sound Danny had never heard from her. Protective instinct surged through him. He angled the shuttle to keep her and the eggs farther from the structural weak points. Milo's voice stuttered back through the comm in a burst of static. "Danny, they're deploying nets. If they catch you, it's over." Nets, high-tensile electromagnetic snares designed to wrap around fleeing ships, disable engines, and drag them back like prey. Danny needed distance, needed cover, needed anything. The navigation map pinged faintly. A nearby gravitational shadow, a debris cluster left from an old mining detonation. The Consortium had abandoned it years ago. Dangerous, unstable, but it provided something the open void didn't. Obstruction. Danny angled the shuttle toward it. Behind him, the first net deployed, a cascade of electric blue expanding across the blackness. Danny shoved the thrusters forward. The shuttle dove toward the debris field. Chunks of broken metal glinted under pale starlight, shards of ancient drills, shattered machinery, twisted beams the length of small houses. The field spun slowly, a deadly carousel of forgotten industry. Whisper hissed at the sight. Danny couldn't blame her. The two pursuing ships followed, hesitant, cautious. Their scanners would struggle to track him in the rotating field. But one wrong turn, one misjudged angle, and the shuttle would shear itself on the metal fragments. Milo whispered faintly through the static, "Danny, that field is a graveyard." "I know." "Then why go in?" Danny inhaled slowly. "Because hiding in danger is still hiding." He threaded the shuttle through the first layer of debris. A massive, jagged beam scraped the hull, sparks shooting across the viewport. Another sharp turn. Another. The pursuing ship stayed back at a distance, trying to pin down his trajectory. The field rotated unpredictably, each fragment drifting like a slow-moving blade. Danny's hands tightened on the controls. One wrong breath and a metal plate swung toward the viewport. Danny jerked the shuttle down, narrowly slipping under it. Another beam approached from the left. Whisper clung to the floor, wings pressed tight around the eggs, body trembling with suppressed fear. Danny whispered, "Just a little farther." The scanner showed the exit to the field. It was narrow but navigable. Just a few hundred meters. The first pursuing ship made a bold move, diving in after him. Their engine wash rattled the debris. A large fragment shifted. Danny saw it too late. A slab of reinforced alloy spun directly toward them, fast, heavy, unstoppable. Whisper screeched, her wings flaring wide around the container. Danny didn't think. Didn't compute. Didn't calculate odds. He simply acted. He killed the engines. The shuttle dropped, a dead weight falling through vacuum. The metal slab skimmed over the roof, scraping a deep gouge across the hull but missing the cockpit by centimeters. The pursuing ship wasn't so lucky. It struck the slab full force. A burst of pale light and shrapnel exploded behind the shuttle, sending fragments scattering like sparks. Danny reignited the engines before momentum could drag them into a rotating beam. He pulled up sharply, weaving through the shifting debris until the field thinned, and then, finally, opened into clear space. For a moment there was only silence. Then Milo's voice broke through, choked with relief. "Danny, Danny, you made it out." Danny didn't answer right away. His hands were still shaking on the controls. Whisper crawled toward him, slow, limbs trembling with exertion, and rested her head against his shoulder. Her breath came in soft, uneven pulses. Danny placed a hand gently on her back. "We're not safe yet," he whispered, "but we're alive." The nav display flickered, recalibrating. The gliders glowed faintly in the distance, still days away at this speed. The remaining Consortium ship cleared the debris field behind them. It was still coming. Danny stared at the slowly approaching dot on the scanner. There would be no easy escape. No clean victory. Just a long, dangerous stretch of space between him and whatever future Whisper's species might still have. He breathed once, then again. Control returning. Resolve settling. He whispered to Whisper, "I'll get you there, even if it kills me." Whisper lifted her head and pressed it into his chest. She understood. Outside the viewport, the stars kept shifting silently as the chase continued across the darkness. The final day approached with no sense of triumph, only a tightening stillness. The shuttle had long since stopped feeling like a vessel and more like a fragile box drifting through the void, every vibration a reminder of how close the engine was to failing. Danny spent the hours scanning indicators, listening for changes in pitch, checking the thermal stabilizers around the egg container. Whisper rarely left it, except to press against Danny whenever the metal frame shuddered from another strain. By the time the gliders appeared as a pale sphere in the distance, Danny hadn't slept in nearly 30 hours. Not properly, not enough to matter. His thoughts drifted in slow, weary circles, logic blurring with instinct, exhaustion pressing in like a soft, unwanted fog. Whisper sensed it. She would nudge him every so often, her scales cool against his skin, as though reminding him that sleep was a luxury they couldn't afford. Not yet. Behind them, the last pursuing ship still followed, never close enough to fire, never far enough to forget. Patient, relentless. Its presence on the scanner felt like a quiet accusation. Milo's voice cracked faintly over the comm, distorted by distance. "Danny, Consortium reinforcements are en route, if you're not off that planet before they arrive." Danny answered with a tired, steady breath. "I know." He didn't say that he doubted he'd be able to take off again, or that he planned to leave the shuttle behind. Some truths were meant to remain unspoken. Whisper climbed onto the co-pilot seat, watching him with eyes full of something he didn't dare interpret. Trust could be beautiful. It could also be unbearable. "We're close," he murmured. The planet grew larger, cracked terrain, long stretches of mineral plains, deep canyons that glowed with bioluminescent clusters when struck by sunlight. He had studied the geological surveys months ago when he was still just a researcher, not a fugitive. Back then, the planet had been a puzzle. Now it was a last chance. A risk wrapped in necessity. The atmospheric entry shook the shuttle so violently that Danny had to brace Whisper with one arm and grip the controls with the other. Heat built around them, red, then white, then a fading orange glow as they plunged through the upper layers. The shaking stopped. Silence thickened. Whisper's wings lifted slightly, feeling the change in pressure. Her body trembled, not from fear but recognition. The scent of her world penetrated the cabin through microscopic leaks, minerals, heat, and something ancient and living. Danny whispered, "You're home." Her eyes didn't leave the window. He guided the shuttle toward an open plateau deep in a canyon shielded by jagged rock walls. Natural cover, the only kind left. Landing was rough, too rough. The starboard stabilizer snapped on contact, and the shuttle tilted violently before settling with a screech that vibrated through the floor. Panels flickered. Systems protested in short, dying bursts. Danny exhaled. "We won't be lifting off again." Whisper climbed down, nudging the egg container urgently. Danny unsealed it, lifting each egg with slow precision. Warm, softly glowing, alive. Whisper guided him toward the canyon opening. The air was thick and warm, filled with drifting particles that clung to his skin. The world hummed faintly beneath his feet, a soft vibration, almost like a heartbeat. He followed her down a natural path carved between tall mineral spires. The silence was immense, broken only by Whisper's soft calls. Then a sound answered. Low echoing. Distant. Danny paused. Whisper chirped again, louder, and the canyon seemed to breathe in response. More voices, more calls. Shapes flickered across the ridge above them, winged silhouettes against the sun. Dozens, then hundreds. They gathered along the edges of the canyon, wings shimmering like living metal, eyes fixed on Whisper, on the eggs, on him. Danny stood very still. Whisper stepped forward, wings trembling from the effort of carrying so much fear and hope at once. The gliders above shifted. One descended, a large male with deep crimson markings along his wings. He landed before Whisper with a soft thud. They touched heads. A greeting, a mourning, a recognition. Danny couldn't tell. Then the male turned, facing Danny, the silence stretched. His instincts whispered caution, respect, surrender. Danny knelt and set the eggs gently on the mineral ground. Whisper pressed herself around them and looked up at the gathered gliders. A series of soft, layered tones filled the canyon, voices overlapping in a language that was more resonance than sound. Danny stayed perfectly still. He was intruding, interrupting something sacred. But Whisper turned toward him, stepped forward and touched her head to his hand. Then she nudged him away. Gently. A farewell. Danny felt something tighten in his chest, a small, quiet ache, loss mixed with gratitude, impossible to separate. He stepped back. Again. One more. Whisper returned to the eggs. The male spread his wings, shielding her from the wind. The others followed, cascading protections, layers of wings forming a living shelter around mother and clutch. Danny whispered, "Take care of them." No response came. None was needed. The ground trembled faintly beneath him, not natural, not part of the planet. Engines. Low in the sky. The pursuing ship descended through the canyon mouth, a predatory shadow dropping through the dust. Dust scattered, metal groaned. Whisper's entire flock shifted, wings opening, bodies tensing. Danny lifted his hands. "Stay back," he whispered to them. "Stay hidden." He stepped forward, alone, into the canyon clearing. The Consortium ship landed with predatory precision. Its ramp descended. Commander emerged first, water swirling violently inside their suit. Their posture was stiff, conflicted, a contradiction in motion. Behind them came Director. His smile was inevitable. "Well," said, spreading his hands, "you made quite the mess." Danny said nothing. Stepped closer. "Where are the specimens?" Danny shook his head once. "They're not specimens." His expression sharpened. "You realize this is your last chance to step aside." Danny didn't move. Nodded to the soldiers behind him. "Fine." They advanced. Danny braced for it, for the blow, the impact, the end. Then a sound cracked across the canyon, sharp as lightning and twice as loud. A glider scream. One, then 10, then hundreds. Wings exploded into the air from the canyon walls, a storm of shimmering bodies, not attacking, warning, filling the sky in a dense, impossible cloud. Froze. Even stared, water rippling inside their suit. The soldiers backed toward the ramp, weapons shaking. Whisper stepped forward through the flock, wings flared wide, body trembling with a force Danny had never seen in her. She made a low, vibrating roar, different from anything she had ever made in captivity. A sound for freedom. A sound the canyon answered in waves. Took one step back. Just one. Spoke softly, voice barely audible. "Director, this is not a species we can control." Stared at the sky, jaw clenched. "Then we destroy them." Danny stepped between them. "No." His eyes narrowed. "Move aside." Danny's voice was quiet, controlled, final. "They're home now. You can't take that from them." Stalked closer. "I can take anything I want." But blocked him, water swirling angrily inside their suit. Director said, "If you fire on them, the entire flock will retaliate. We will not survive it. Neither will you. Leave now." stared at, then at Danny, then at the canyon. The gliders circled overhead in a spiraling storm of wings and light. His jaw flexed. Retreat tasted like poison to him. But death tasted worse. He signaled the soldiers back onto the ship. Whisper watched silently as the vessel lifted off, disappearing into the upper atmosphere. Danny stood alone in the clearing, breathing hard, not from fear, but from the slow release of tension held too long. Whisper approached him. She pressed her head against his chest. Once, a final gesture. Then she turned back to her clutch, her flock. Danny whispered goodbye. He didn't expect her to understand the word. But maybe she did. Because she hesitated for just one breath before she returned to the others. Danny stepped backward toward the broken shuttle. His legs felt heavy, his heart heavier. He wouldn't see her again. He wasn't meant to. Some bonds were temporary, necessary, beautiful because they ended. He boarded the shuttle. Systems barely flickered to life, enough for a distress signal, enough to survive until someone, maybe Pollock, maybe Milo, came for him. Danny looked out the viewport one last time. The sky was full of wings. Wings that no longer trembled in fear. Wings that belonged to a species finally home. He whispered into the empty cabin. "You're free now." He closed his eyes as the signal activated. Outside, the canyon echoed with glider calls, soft, layered, endless. And for the first time, he let himself believe it. He had done enough.